Let's be honest, we live and work in a crowded marketplace. There are providers on every street corner offering to do what we do for less money and or to do it faster. So how do you build a career? How do you build a business that allows you to stand out? Here's the secret, is that within your personal purpose, your life's purpose is your unique competitive advantage. Today's guest is going to walk us through how he helps an entire army of mortgage loan officers to really develop their unique competitive advantage by finding their purpose. It's going to be a great episode. You're going to love this one. Question is this: how do those of us in the real estate industry with crazy amounts of ambition, how do we think bigger than the building of our own empires? How do we simultaneously seek success and significance, income and impact? My name is Justin Stoddard, and this is the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. All right, welcome back, Big Thinkers. Excited to be with you this week. Have a very special guest, a very dear friend of mine, somebody who I've admired for a long time, joining us here today to talk about, again, this exact topic of how do you find your competitive market advantage by identifying your purpose. Mr. Mark Charlton, pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Hey, man. Grateful to be here.
I'm a big fan of yours. You seem to have life kind of figured out. You're in when it comes to business, you've personally closed over $1 billion of loan volume. Amazing. Outside of that, you're a man of faith, which I deeply admire. You have a beautiful family, 3 beautiful children, and you've got just your house in order. So we're excited to learn from a guy who's done it right and is now in the business of pouring back into others and helping them to also do it right. So thank you again for joining us today.
Well, thank you. No, it's my pleasure to be here, and I've been blessed for sure. And it's been fun to watch you on your journey and watch you step into your purpose, which I know we're going to talk a little bit about. But you and your family. I won't keep up with your kid count. That's for sure. I think we're done at 3, but it's sure been fun to watch you expand and grow and just get out there and pour into everybody that you come into contact with. That's always been something I've admired about you.
Thanks, man. It's been a fun journey, and being around people like you has only propelled me to want to do more of that. It's really been a really fun experience. So let's chat a little bit about about being unique in a marketplace where there is a lot of commonality, right? Obviously, the mortgage business that you're in has been hit hard over the past year and a half, and so people are probably looking to do it for less and less and less. People, willing to cut all kinds of corners just to make things happen and work. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to say, how do you find your unique competitive advantage in a tight market? So let's maybe just kind of share with us how has this model that you've adopted, has it stood the test of a tough market? Like, is it withstanding? Like, are you guys growing currently? What does that look like?
Well, we are. We actually have been growing quite a bit, and in different markets. And you talked about faith. I think that each opportunity, each appointment is a divine meeting. And so one thing is saying yes to those opportunities. If you get an opportunity to meet with somebody, take the opportunity to get out there, because you never know what you're gonna find and who you're gonna connect with. But I would say absolutely, it's stood the test of this difficult market. We've been blessed to be growing over the last few years, as well as one commitment that I made to our operations team is that we wouldn't do any layoffs, and we've stayed true to that word. That's something that I'm really proud of in an ever-changing market. I started Vision Mortgage Group about 2.5 years ago. It'll be 3 years in May. And it wasn't because the other companies we work with weren't great. They were amazing. They had amazing leadership, great opportunities, great place to learn. But we just couldn't find all of the right tools and all of the right things that included transparency. And I think that transparency is something that stands out about the great companies and the people that are doing great things is being a transparent organization allows for everybody to make the same decision, the best decisions, hopefully, for themselves and their clients and their partners. And some of the larger companies just don't provide that, and I understand why. But it was just something that we weren't really interested in, because we wanted everybody to have the same playbook that we or I did as a branch manager, as a leader. in the organization, we want to give them the same tools and the same playbook. And sometimes there's fear around that. I think from a leadership perspective is like, if we give them too much information, that it might work against us. So we've decided to take that risk and partner with people who say yes to us.
You said something interesting. And again, I want everybody to know here that Mark's purpose is not your purpose, right? So if we talk about things where where you say that I don't relate to that, that's great. We're simply looking at who Mark is and the way he's built his business and the way that he helps other people build their business as a way for you to find out your own purpose, right? So just know that this isn't prescriptive because you're unique, right? So you said something interesting there that I wanted to uncover that I think you said each meeting is a divine meeting, right? Obviously, not everybody says that. Can you expound upon what that means for you? Because I think within that, we'll be able to learn a little bit more about your purpose.
For sure. So, I think that, faith is a big component of my life, as you said. I believe that God's aligning things. I've always struggled with releasing control, which is I still struggle with to this day. But I do think I know for a fact that anytime that I've come into contact with just somebody randomly, and I'll say random, but because I don't believe that it is. I think that we come into people's lives in certain seasons, whether it's for us or it's for them or for both. And I just think that in those instances where even when I maybe didn't feel like it, when I made that real conversation or maybe went to a coffee date or whatever it is, I've gotten so much out of it. And the thing is something that my wife has told me for a long time. And it's something that rings true anytime we go and get to speak to people or speak to groups of people, is that I have nothing to give, nothing to learn, only something to give. And so, no, I have, nothing to learn. That's not what I said. I have only something to give, nothing to prove. Nothing to prove, only something to give. And because in our industry, as you know, I think that there's a lot of an ego, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. There's a lot of people that really want more for their life. They're betting on themselves in a commissioned state. But I think that we get into comparison so often. And I think that the thing about purpose for me is that regardless of what you're doing, that never changes. And I think that the conversation around purpose is there's so many people talking about purpose. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? I know that my purpose is to break the chains of generational brokenness in men and women. Like that's my purpose. It took me quite a while to figure that one out. But ultimately, when I'm making decisions in business or in life or in meetings or conversations like we're having today, I'm like, does that move my purpose forward? And if the answer is yes, then I'll say, I'll do it. And I'll say yes to it. So I don't know if that answered the question or not.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think just what you said there, each meeting is divine, is that it's not a coincidence, like that we're sitting across the table from each other for a reason. And I'm here because I have something that I can give, some contribution that I can make to your life. And I think when you start to again, I believe that as well, right? Others may or may not, right? But I do believe that life is less about coincidences, but a kind of a big, beautiful tapestry, and that we cross people's lives for a purpose and at the right timing that is helpful, potentially helpful to both sides. And so I love that. I think that's great. I guess my question to you, kind of going back to what you said, your purpose is breaking the bonds of generational. What did you say that?
Breaking the chains of generational brokenness.
Generational brokenness. How did you, and maybe in this is part of what we've promised listeners today, how did you come to that? Because I think people listening to this are like, that's super cool, right? Breaking the bonds of generational brokenness, but how do I find my purpose? So help us kind of understand how you came to that conclusion. How did you find that?
I grew up in a fishing family where men, it was hard work. It was some very strong men in my life. My father and my grandfather showed me what hard work looked like. I grew up, and my mom's amazing, but she had drug addiction when I was a kid. And there was a lot of trauma as a child growing up. And what I didn't realize that I know now is how much, how much I used that as an excuse to make bad decisions. growing up. But two, also I used it as a catalyst to be angry, and use that frustration and anger to create my life. And I've always cared deeply for people, but I didn't realize how much the trauma of my childhood actually affected the decisions that I made, and the people that I allowed into my life, and some of those things. And I was lucky early on to find some mentors and coaches who kind of helped me, see things a little bit differently. And I think that, my having children and watching that, and as you know, you've seen it more times than I have, but watching my children be born, it changes you. And it's, I was already starting down this path of like trying to figure out who I was. But I'll tell you, I know many people wake up like this, and I used to wake up and I didn't like the person that I saw looking back at me in the mirror. And I didn't understand why. And it was because I didn't know who I was. I really didn't know who I was. And I think that the purpose piece of it is really getting to understanding who you actually are. Like, who are you? Well, who are you? I think that a lot of questions we talk about the why. Like, why do you do what you do? What is your why? And I think we get our why and our purpose mixed up personally. I think that our purpose is kind of the way I like to describe it is it's kind of a filter that you use to filter your decisions through. Like, does this align with who I say I am or who God says I am? And I like that your why can change at times, but your purpose, in my opinion, doesn't.
And there's a lot to take in there, Mark. It's really beautiful what you shared there with us. Again, going back to what you said about your purpose is it's who you are, right? It's kind of your identity. And I do believe the things that I've studied about when people can make the most significant changes in their life, it's not because of pure will or determination or grit. It's because they have an identity shift. They recognize something new about themselves that they didn't realize before. And so they start to act differently. And if you really want to help whether it be kids or whether it be people you lead in business, if you want to help them have the most significant upgrade to their performance, it's about helping them to see themselves through different lenses, right? It's helping them to see that, like, the identity that they need to be to get the results that you want. It's not about pushing harder on them. It's not about the carrot or the stick. It's about helping them to have that aha of like, I am this person. Therefore, right, this person, this identity that I'm proposing to be or wanting to be acts this way. And so the performance follows that identity shift. And that's what I hear you saying, which makes complete sense with, again, much of what I've learned and studied both in myself and my own weaknesses and challenges and setbacks and some successes, is that identity, that either the missing identity or the understanding of a more full and true identity is what really propels me to take the actions that then create the results that we all want.
For sure. And if you're walking in alignment with that, things just feel like they come together. And I think that many of us are out of alignment with that. And we know it, internally we know it, but sometimes we fight that internal struggle of like, I know this is kind of going against, especially when there's money involved. It's really easy to get caught up in, I want to provide and I want to, and I did this. For a long time, I got in the mortgage business because we had my wife and I, when we first tried to buy our first house, we had like the prototypical, if you could picture like the sleazy mortgage guy that everybody pictures when they think about mortgage or car sales or whatever, right? We had that guy, and we ended up losing our earnest money. The guy tried to commit fraud, and we lost the home, which was a blessing. It was 2007. But what I saw was somebody who was so out of alignment with who they said they were. But I was like, man, if this is how people are being treated in this industry, like, we can do really well and do well by others. And it was kind of like the catalyst that got me into the business. It was the catalyst that got me into the business, because I'm like, people deserve to be taken care of. This is a big deal. And had I not been open to, questioning my identity in that moment, I probably would have stayed in what was comfortable. And it was tough. It was 2009 when that was going on. It took me a few years to jump off, but I think that, 2016 was a big pivotal moment for me. We had our best financial year ever at that time. And I came home and I was frustrated and disappointed and wanted to just have a drink of whiskey and ask my wife, I'm like, what are we doing? And we had it was a very impactful conversation with us. I just said, I'm putting food on the table. We have a roof over our head. Like, what else do you want? And she said, you. And I was like, I don't even know what that means because I don't know who I am. And that was a big, it's only been 8 years since then, but I've been on a journey ever since to find out who that is.
Man, I think that there's a lot of lessons in there for everybody, right? Is that number one is that if I look back earlier in your story, the fact that you were holding on to the failures of other people to define your identity, right? Looking back at your mom's struggles and challenges, that became, as you described, an excuse for you to make maybe more comfortable decisions, more easy decisions, as opposed to the hard decisions that were more in line with the identity of who you really were, right? And I think for all of us, that ought to be some soul searching and introspection about, like, are there certain activities I'm doing in my life that are not guiding me to have the outcome that I want? And if so, am I pointing to some other person or circumstance or situation that I'm doing it because they cheated me, or I was wrong, or I was given a bad family or a bad whatever, right? And I think before we can ever really become who we're supposed to become, we have to re-empower ourselves by not pointing the finger at other people. Because as soon as we do that, we give all of our power just leaves as soon as we point to other circumstances. We essentially say, I'm a victim and I can't change. This is who I am because of this thing. You just gave all your power to that thing. And so what I heard you saying is, like, you cut that off and said, no, it's not because I'm not making decisions because of that. It's because I don't know who I am, right? You took ownership in that moment. And then you began to discover, okay, who am I really, right? I'm a man of faith. I'm a husband whose wife, right, gets all of him, right? And now a father, right? And it's like all of a sudden these pieces started to come together. And did it work quite like that, Mark, where once you started to cut off the excuses and really be honest with yourself and the people that you loved around you, is that when the pieces started to come together for you? Or kind of tell us about the next step of the journey.
Absolutely. I think, what I've found in a lot of industries like ours, I kind of cut our lives up into 4 categories: faith, family, fitness, and finances. And in our industry, or in sales industries, I think that most people have 2 of those pretty much dialed in. When you've created success, I think that finance and oftentimes it's fitness. For some reason, those 2 go hand in hand. And that was my story. I was, my wife and I used to compete in bodybuilding and do all this fun stuff. I was an athlete, and but really I wasn't connected to, I knew I wanted to have a family, but I didn't really know how to define that. And I think that I know this for a fact. We've helped over many, many men, specifically in business. It's something that is part of my purpose, is to coach married men in business. But remember that when you say your family, and you can line out all of those family members, that you're included in that. And I saw myself outside of that family, right? I was like, my family is, my wife and my children, my grandparents, my parents. And it's funny when you ask, if you ask people that question, like, who's your family? Almost always they forget, oh yeah, I'm a part of that. And I think that was a big pivotal shift for me, was realizing, one, that I've got an incredible woman in my life that whether it's we're under the bridge or we're living in a beautiful home, it doesn't matter. We're going to be together, and that's what she wants over anything. That was a big catalyst for me to really start to get right between my ears. But ultimately, I had to find out who I was, because I was tired of not liking the person, as I said, looking back in the mirror. And I could put on a good a face, and I truly cared about everybody else, but the person I saw, I didn't really like that guy, and so it took a little bit of time. But yeah, I think that man, it was. But yes, I also think that you got to have mentorship. You got to find people that are willing to invest in you, and also who aren't the ones that are just going to stroke your ego and tell you that you're great. Great mentors will tell you when you're messing up, and they'll also tell you when who they see you. Because when we fall out of identity, which happens, you got to have people in your life that are like, that's not who you are. And as a parent, you know this. I mean, we want to speak identity into our children as much as we can. It's like, this is who you are. We have this thing in the morning when I take my kids to school where we like, what are your words for the day? And they scream out like, I'm a leader. And we just have, it's such a fun experience for me. It gets me fired up. But like, I just can't imagine not doing that now. And I didn't have that. And again, like I said, my parents instilled a lot of great qualities in me. There were just some things that were lacking, like all of us. And my kids will probably have things that they're going to lack. It just won't be the same thing. And I didn't want to project and continue the same family traumas and things that we do. And I think Ed Milet's somebody that I follow a ton, and he talks about being the one, like the one in your family. And I believe that everybody who is here on this planet right now, one, has a big purpose, but two, you are the one that can change the trajectory of your name if you choose to. And then, as you said, something you said earlier is that, you get the choice of using that as an excuse or using it as a catalyst. I started to look at extreme ownership, as you said. And once I started to look at, what could I have controlled in my childhood? Not a lot, but in my adult age, I could control a lot, but also the relationship that I put on that experience is what had to shift for me. It was my relationship with the experience that I had, my relationship with the trauma that I had, my relationship with how those things affected me. I had to change that relationship to start to view it differently. And I think that that's a huge piece of this purpose. Because I look back now, of course, I don't want the bad things that happened to me as a kid to ever, I don't wish that on anybody, but there's no way I would ever change it because it's made me who I am.
You talked about being somebody that you didn't like when you woke up. I mean, you're like practically professionally good looking. You were a that's a Zoolander quote, by the way. You were a bodybuilder, have a beautiful wife, making a lot of money. Like what, I mean, were there, and again, we don't have to get into like, skeletons in the closet, but I mean, what was that real? What was there stuff that you needed to change to love yourself? Or were you just not, I'm trying to figure out like why, because I believe there are other people out there that are struggling with that. It's like, I don't like who I am. Right. What was missing for you to start to like who you were or who you are?
Well, I think there was a piece of me that I just didn't have trust in others. And I don't know to be honest, I don't know where that stemmed from, but I had such a complex so I got bullied a lot when I was a kid, when I was, growing up. And I had this complex of, I'm small. It was just this, this thing. So I started to get to the point where I was getting picked on, and bullied, and it just crushed my confidence. And even to the point where I'd have people that told me they love me, and I'm like, you're lying. And so I just had this, I don't know if it's I put on a mask, or I put on whatever it was. I didn't feel right inside with I wasn't in alignment with who I was projecting. And then when somebody would tell me, or they'd speak into me, I would just chalk it up as, they just want me to feel good. It wasn't it sounds so terrible to say that, but it was like, I just didn't believe them. And I went through a process of a coaching program that actually took me into the traumas that I had. And, there was sexual brokenness and a lot of things that really, I didn't realize were actually in there, and I think that, whatever it is, those traumas that we experience as children, like it does paint a picture inside of who we are, or who we how we feel. And I had to uncover, I had to bring them out into the light. And once they got out into the light, then I had to choose whether it was something I'm going to hold on to or not. And you got to have. I was just blessed to find some people that were willing to go there with me, and my wife was one of those. Right? She was ready to go to battle, and I think that when things are going good, it's easy to say we would, we're here, ride or die. But she's been there with me where we lived in a 200 square foot apartment, and our debit card didn't go through for the necessities, and she's still right here with me, and we're not too far from that at any moment. So I think that it's just I've just been so blessed to have people like that in my life. And so I think that once the biggest shift was I had to get everything out into the light, and then realize what I'm going to hold on to, and then asking God, like, who do you say I am? Really asking. And if you get to the point where you ask enough, you start to hear it.
Your vulnerability, I think, opens the door for all of us to be really honest with ourselves, to say, has there been a point in my life where I really didn't like who I was? And I think if we're honest, we could all say that at some level, whether it was because of decisions that we had made ourselves that were out of alignment with our values, or if it's just because we were listening to the labels of other people that were maybe inaccurate or unfair or just cruel. And so wherever you've been in that, right, I think everybody that's human has been through that before, where you look at yourself and you're like, that's like, I'm not happy with who I am. And so I think it's awesome that you've shared that with us, because we all see you as being pretty put together now, right? You've built a beautiful life for yourself. Is there anything else, Mark, as you think about, and I know the process that you walk your loan officers through, by the way, for those that are familiar, maybe with Mark, again, he launched Vision Mortgage, which you can tell it's very synonymous with what he does, helps people to really build a beautiful vision for themselves and then put that into action. When you're walking other people through this process of really identifying their unique competitive advantage, right, from their purpose, I guess my question is, once people start to really identify the identity, the person that they want to be, right? You've told us about, your faith, family, fitness, and finances, kind of getting clear on the vision that you have for yourself in those areas. How does that then translate into a competitive advantage that they can use in their business? And I think that's where a lot of people are at, of like, okay, I'm going to go to work to get more clarity on the identity that I want to be and the person that I am, that I'm really proud of, right? And then how do I translate that into business, right? You obviously have kind of shared yours, right? Breaking, generational bands of brokenness. What advice would you give to somebody who's going from like, okay, I'm pretty clear on my purpose, to turning that into something that they can utilize in business?
Yeah, well, I think one is getting into really understanding the outcome that you want to create in your life. And I know that, setting targets and goals is super important, but like, what is a true outcome? What do you really want to get out of this? Like, if it's in your fitness, like, what is something that when you achieve it, what will you have that you don't have today? What will you be doing, fast forwarding to when you've achieved this target, or this goal, or this outcome? What will you be doing that you aren't doing right now? And what will you be, or who will you be when you're in that? The problem is most people set targets just in that way. When I have this, I can do this, then I can be this. And what that does, it opens a door for comparison. It's like, well, I did this, I had this now, and I can do this, and now I can be successful, I can be confident, or whatever those labels are that we're looking for. But when we do it and we're not really connected to the being portion of it first, we go to comparison. We start to see, well, this person down the road, they did $2 million more last month than I did. Now I can't be successful. I can't be, because it goes into comparison. And so what we really need to focus on is, who do we want to be first? If that's who I say I am, how does that person show up in life? How does that person, what do they do? Like, if I want to be a great father, what do great fathers do? what do great fathers have? If you work it in, we like to go through this process of, and this is how we set purposeful targets for our people in our company and in our business partners too. It's something that I love to do with everybody. But it's really finding what is a true outcome that's going to move the needle in your life, and who's going to be involved in that outcome, who's going to be blessed by that outcome, and then also who's going to benefit from it. And I think that once you start to kind of align all of those things, it gives you a little bit more clarity on who you are and who you say you want to be. The other piece is once you get connected to that, you'll start to figure out what your story is. And I think you're excellent, Justin, at sharing people's stories, telling stories. And I'm not saying the BS. I'm saying, like, this is who I am. This is why I do what I do. And this is what you can expect from me. And I think that, that comes into the why I do what I do, but this is who I am. I think the question isn't just why. It's like, why do I do what I do? It's why are you doing what you do? What is the significance of your story and how you got here? Because that's what people really connect with, and once you really feel that, and you can truly feel that being piece of it, how could you not create success that way? And I'm not just saying financial success. Like, I have better relationships today with my family, with everybody that I come into contact with, because I really know who I am, and I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. And I think that in our industry, the fake it till you make it, it's pretty easy to say, well, if I want to be a millionaire, this is what millionaires do, so I'm going to do this, and you're just not connected to it, right? You just got to. I think that because it kind of sounds like when I said, if you're going to be confident, be confident. If you're going to be successful, be successful. That's kind of can skew the fake it till you make it, but ultimately, it's really getting connected to your story.
Well, I do think that when you do get connected to that, you start to realize how you can help other people create their story, right? So I'm going to take kind of what you've learned there and share a little bit of mine, right? I'm kind of known as obviously host of the Think Bigger Real Estate Show, right? How did this come about? Well, for me, I love personal growth. I find that much of my gratification in life comes through growth, not only me, but helping other people. And so this show became a product of that, this is how I can go find great people like you and put them on display to grow myself and other people, right? So this kind of thinking bigger to become what we're supposed to become, right? Kind of reaching our potential. That right there became part of my value proposition, right? To your point, once I identified that this, like I was made to do this, to really uncover successful people and what made them that way and share that with other people. This became much more than just a podcast. This became a passion project for me, right? And very aligned with my identity. And then for those that know me well, right, know that I authored the book, The Upstream Model. And for me, I realized that all too often I see professionals chasing business all day long, right, so that they can put food on the table. And yet they're not present at the table that they put food on. For me, being a family guy, that's a big deal, right? Yeah. Is that I don't want to just put food on the table. The food's not the thing. The food is, it's a component, but I want to be at the table with them. And so this model of leveraging and really scaling a referral-based business through introductions from other professionals, right? Which is really how a referral-based business can scale at the highest levels, is through regular recurring introductions from other professionals to your ideal clients. That became a real passion project for me. So as I look at your advice, Mark, that's very, very fitting to how I got to where I'm at. Is it personal growth and developing other people, and then really giving them a means to support their loved ones, not just with money, but with their time at the same time, while building a relationship-based business. Like that's who I am, right? That embodies me, and that has now become my value proposition to the industries that, that we serve. So I love that you walked us through that, because hopefully your story and my story and the framework that you've shared here really helps people to start, that are listening, to say, okay, how do I then take this step? Number one, to uncover my purpose, and then to see how does that turn into something in the business world that sets me apart, that causes me to be different. So I'm not just competing on price, right? That's that's margin and soul draining business to be doing that, right? So how do I provide something so unique that people are willing to wait for it and pay for it, right? And that's where business gets fun and enjoyable, and we're able to really make an impact on people because our purpose is infused into that. So thank you for that journey.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks, man. It's been a super fun conversation, and I can see why you've done so well, right? Is that people want to be around people like you, people who once struggled, people who once weren't aligned with their highest identity, and they figured it out, right? And are in the process of still figuring it out, and they're bringing people with them, right? They're bringing others with them, saying, "Look, hey, I'm on this journey. I've come a distance, and I've got a distance more to go. Come with me.
Yeah,
come with me. Let's do this together," right? And I get goosebumps thinking about that because that's, again, aligned with both of our visions of kind of leveling up, the people around us and helping them recognize their identity.
That's so good. I think that you just touched on something that is so powerful, is that we've never arrived. And I think that if you feel like you've arrived, then that's the day that your demise starts happening. And, I think, I hope that in a year from now, I look back and I'm like, man, I have so much more to learn, because we do. We all have so much to learn. There's so many amazing things that this world has to offer for us. And I think that too many people, the story that I had was that life's going to be hard. Like, life has to be hard to get, just to get to the normal. The life is hard. That's normal. And that just doesn't sound great. Life is going to have hard moments, but there's opportunity for you every single day to find fulfillment, to find joy. And that was the thing I was lacking. I was lacking fulfillment and joy because I was just, like you said, I was focused on the food on the table, but not who's around the table. Like, that's such a great way to put that. That's so good.
I love it. It's been so fun to spend time with you, my friend. I want to ask you one more question, and then we're going to wrap up, which is this. You are a big thinker, and you are in the business of helping other people to think bigger as well. What is it that you do, Mark, on a regular basis to continue to expand your possibilities, to ensure that your world is expanding? What does that look like for you?
Good. So I think that, how do you know if you're winning any game? You keep score. So I have a daily game that I play with myself every single day, and it's a 10-point system, but it touches all pieces: faith, family, fitness, and finances. So every day I do something where I move my body and I nourish my body. Every day I do something, and I call it love or life. I make a deposit in somebody that's in my life that I love, whether typically it's my children or my wife. And then I reach out to somebody who's on my mind. Learn something and teach it. So whether it's a Bible verse or if it's a book you're reading, teach somebody something that you just learned, and then reviewing the rest of what your goals are for the week. So that is something that I started doing a few years back, and it's absolutely impacted the way that I live my life, and it keeps things on track and on focus. So if you want to win at the game of life, you got to keep score.
And I love that. We're very similar. I have a scoreboard that I keep every day on kind of those key areas of life. So I found that to be really keeps me grounded, and not just, hoping that I'm improving, but I can keep score. If you want to know for sure, keep score, right?
For sure. And hope isn't a strategy. We've learned that in the last few years in this industry.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, Mark, thank you again for coming on today and helping us to think bigger. It's been a total pleasure. And my final request of everybody listening here today are these 3 simple words, and they are: go think bigger. Thanks again, Mark, for helping us do that, my friend.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate you, bro.
Value in anything that you heard here today, do me a favor and just take a quick screenshot of this episode, tag me in it on social media. That will give you the heads up to create more content like this in future episodes. Also, if you are wanting to build your wealth advisory team in less than 30 days that gives you 2 to 4 professional referrals every month, go to proinsight.com, or you can reach out to